So if there's one thing the latest episodes of Attack on Titan proves, it's that the plot of this series is not and has never been as simple and one-dimensional as we once thought it was. Like, remember when this series was about exterminating Titans, but specifically this one, and then this one turned out to be your father's ex-wife who also gave birth to your half-brother. A half-brother, by the way, who believes he's doing the right thing and trying to kidnap you, but in reality, nobody truly knows what's right or wrong. Because what determines what's right or wrong, especially in the situation the Marleyans and Eldians find themselves in, is history. And when it comes to history, the winners are always the ones who write it. Though to truly understand the history of this world, the Marleyans and the Eldians, the episode first must have done a good job at getting all the lore and all the details through to the audience. And that's where we will begin this discussion, right where the episode begins, and that's with this episode's continued coverage of Attack on Titan's 86th chapter. A chapter titled That Day, which is also a chapter that fortunately gives us an abundance of information regarding this world and how the Eldians on Paradise ended up there. I, for one, loved how the story of Emil and how the 9 Titans came to be was drawn by Isayama in the manga, and I love how in the anime those illustrations looked like they contained a lot of history. Though, unfortunately, this information comes at a price, with one of the darkest moments in the series in my opinion. I know that this adaptation isn't really known for censoring those dark or brutal moments, but if there was one thing in these episodes I thought they would try to skip over, it would be GRISHA'S sister getting eaten by dogs. But I mean, the lack of censorship to me is always appreciated, because it doesn't dull down the emotional impact that learning about the truth of his sister's death has on Grisha. And it also doesn't make his emotions anything that they weren't. His emotions are captured beautifully, and his motivation to restore Eldia to the great nation the subjects of Emil believe it once was is established. But the episode goes on and continues to cover chapter 87, titled Borderline, which, by the way, also marks the beginning of this series' adaptation of its 22nd volume. A volume with a cover that will bring back memories and remind us of how this season's first episode began, with the ocean. Now, this chapter brought its fair share of information as well. For example, with the information given to us this episode, we know why Eren was able to use the coordinate ability during the finale of Season 2. That being because although Eren himself is not of royal blood, Dina Fritz, who became the Smile Titan and someone who Eren came into direct contact with, was of royal blood. Absolutely everything about how this chapter was adapted is beautiful. Finding out that the Titans from the Battle of Trost were once friends of Grisha and were once also fighting to restore Eldia really makes me look at those earlier episodes differently. The adaptation of Isayama's illustrations were beautiful, and when it came to dialogue, Tsuchida Hiroshi, Grisha's voice actor, did an amazing job as well. But if you're still confused about the history and lore that was dropped this episode, I do recommend checking out this volume, as it nicely packs all that information in a cool 2-page summary right at the beginning of the volume. So, as you may know, or may not, typically, after giving my thoughts on how an episode went about adapting the source material, I then go on and discuss certain themes that can be found in an episode, or just discuss instances of character or plot development. Though, when it comes to themes in this episode, I want to mention before anything that this will be a discussion where I will try my hardest not to mention or dive into the somewhat recent controversy surrounding Attack on Titan. claims that, amongst other things, Isayama is a fascist, anti-Semite, the list goes on. And because of the parallels that this certain part of Attack on Titan's story does have to horrible events that have transpired in humanity's history, Attack on Titan is therefore propaganda for such extreme views and beliefs. I won't link or say anything surrounding this topic, at least not here in this video, but a quick Google search or Twitter search can give you the information that you need. I'm recording! Though frankly, the only reason I am mentioning this now is because this is a topic that will possibly gain more attention now that the anime has gone to this part of the story. And because of that, if you are a fan of the series, it's my personal belief that you should, 1, be aware of the conversation surrounding it, and 2, if you find yourself caring enough, should be knowledgeable enough on the topics at hand to be able to formulate your own stance and opinions on what is being discussed. But anyway, moving on, I want to kick this off by talking about Grisha more so than anything else, simply because this is his portion of the story. And seeing as how Grisha is Zeke's and Eren's father, and therefore a part of his story, I can also talk about them. So this episode gave us insight to not only how Grisha was brought up, but it also showed us Zeke's upbringing. Both were brought up in a similar fashion with fathers that believed too much in something. And of course, their mistakes of thinking that their children would care enough about the same thing is what eventually made Grisha what he was, but also what led him to the land of paradise. Now with this episode in mind, look back at episode 54 and suddenly some negative comments Zeke made about his father make a lot more sense. And now that we are aware of the past, it's not unreasonable for us to believe that Zeke is genuinely concerned for Eren. Because I guess from Zeke's perspective, Eren is a successful byproduct of his father's brainwashing. And you can't really blame Zeke. Much like Grisha, Zeke refused to believe the story that his father was telling him. And here's where we get into these two stories that are being told. There's two sides to every story, as they say, and here the Marleyans have one, and so do the Eldians. The Marleyans believe that the Eldians attempted to eradicate races with the power of the Titans, and they do so blindly. And Grisha, alongside the other subjects of Ymir, believe that Ymir did none of the things the Marleyans claim, but instead helped build the world. Because without being able to read the language, Grisha just took a picture of a stick figure holding up a stick and read that as, "Yo, Ymir built this shit, and I believe so because I am a subject of Ymir." Both races believe in a truth that's beneficial to their side, as it tends to be. But can we, you and me, right now, figure out the truth with the episodes that we have? It may not be the truth, but it did lead me to a realization when I first read this. Look no further than Reiner, Bertolt, and Annie. They are Eldians, but because only subjects of Ymir, aka Eldians, can transform into Titans, it was beneficial to Marley to give people who can become Titans an honorary Marleyan status to fight for them. Which is why the likes of Reiner, Bertolt, Annie, and even Zeke are fighting for Marley. But let's look deeper into that thought right there. That means that those four were brought up believing that Eldians were these devils, that Eldians committed this atrocity and therefore deserved to suffer. But when the three, Reiner, Bertolt, and Annie, entered the walls and met the people that lived within them, their mission to kill the devils turned out to be a lot more difficult. Because what they found living inside the walls were not devils, but normal human beings. Annie breaking and Reiner developing a new personality at the moment of Marco's death, and Bertolt's speech in episode 36 make a lot more sense now that we know that what they were taught to believe to be true may not be true. And even if it was, even if the Marleyans are correct and 1,000 plus years ago the Eldian Empire brought down Marley and oppressed several races, is it fair to judge an entire race of people based off the actions of their ancestors? Which is why what Marley is doing is not a matter of having to pay for what you did, but to me, it seems more like Marley is using the past they believe to be true to validate their fear of the Eldians, and also using that to validate their desire to exterminate them. So how can the truth be figured out when it's possible that the two groups of people in this discussion are so caught up in their own lies to see anything else? I spend a lot of this episode talking about the truth, but does the truth even matter at this point? But these are my thoughts, and I'm curious to read yours. If you're an anime only, let me know how you felt about this episode and any predictions you may have. All I really want to know is, how did you take all of this new information? Do things make sense now? How many theories did you toss out of the fucking window, and how many new theories came in? And if you're a manga reader, let me know how you felt Studio Wit adapted this episode and what parts do you think they could have done a better job with, if any. I'd appreciate it if you liked this video. If you did enjoy it, it helps the channel out a lot. Also, feel free to follow me on Twitter, link in the description. And of course, subscribe to the channel and make sure you hit that bell. That way, you don't miss a video and can continue watching Attack on Titan and many other series with me. And with that being said, I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you all soon. Bye bye.